A very warm welcome to all of you to episode 2 of The Dark Side of the Sun. We had a rather robust discussion last week, and we were left with a whole lot of questions that were posed to us by participants, which Sister Denise will be answering soon. But first, Sister Denise would like to share something with everyone. Over to you.
Thank you. I'm just making myself slightly bigger to be equal size to you. Good morning, everyone. Good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are. And I know in addition to the group on Zoom, there are many on Facebook. So we are quite a big group and we're in many languages. I'm not quite sure exactly how many, but welcome to everyone in all the different languages. Everyone was with us the last time, and there were many repercussions from what we were talking about the last time, because this is something that has been talked about for, I would say, between 20 and 30 years, but I think people are still having unanswered questions. So we hope that although there are paradoxes that I think we all need to be very aware of, and particularly I have been talking lately about that when you do Raj Yoga, at least when I first discovered about Raj Yoga, before I came into Gyan, I was particularly interested in it because I heard that it is the most difficult of all difficult things. And that is what interested me, because I thought if it's easy, it's not worth it. And so if we were going to do Raj Yoga as it really is, then we are going to expect lots of obstacles. This is why Baba calls us the destroyers of obstacles. And if there aren't any obstacles, you couldn't be a destroyer of obstacles. And mostly the practice of Raj Yoga is a purification process, so that all the impurities individually and I think collectively have to come up and attack us and burst out and erupt all over the place. But at the same time, there are things that maybe we need to make sure that they are in place, and that is that we are supportive of one another. Baba calls this a pilgrimage. And so we are pilgrims. Each one is doing their own practice. You're alone with God, definitely. But at the same time, we are a community. And Baba is creating a kingdom as well as a civilization, as well as a community. And he calls it a dharma, which is really a civilization. I can't say more that there's no such thing as the deity religion. I think one of the big issues that we have is that the way the Murli is translated sometimes makes us think about these things in a way that is a little bit simplified or simplistic, and a little bit, sweet children sit in the kindergarten and play and be good and be nice and do what your teacher says. And actually, this is we are adults, and so I am really wanting us to bring this onto the serious level that it is intended to, because we cannot achieve what Baba wants us to achieve if we don't do that. So now there are people who would rather we don't take it in this way, but I really think that we have to, because world destruction is not a small thing, and the discussions that we're doing here, we're not doing it lightly. We're doing it because there are real issues that we do want to address, and we want to make sure that everyone's clear about everything, what's what, and that we are empowered, that we are in our power, and that we handle the obstacles as they come without doubting ourselves and without minimizing or diminishing ourselves. Because if we do that, then we're not really able to be good instruments for Baba, and we're not able to really represent Baba in the world, which is what he wants. So I think that's about everything that I would say to start with. And I'd like to pass it over to Magla for taking the questions that we didn't finish the last time.
How do we help ourselves go through these mental, emotional, painful interruptions? Actually, it's eruptions. When there's no one you can talk to, help you go through it, even if you know all the gyan, why it's erupting. It doesn't help at times, especially when the strong emotions come. We've decided to leave out the names of all of those who asked questions in the interest of everyone's privacy, but this was the question that emerged on Facebook last week.
Yeah, I think that one of the things that we're dealing with is that the growth of the number of BKs intensified very quickly, and perhaps more quickly than we could put in place all the systems that we need to put in place. And so I think it's really up to us to help each other. I think that in the early days, it was all very much, we were absolutely brand new to this. And we had the dadis, and we had Bab Dada, and we had people who were very sensitive to our needs and who were available, and that the BK was more of a family and less of an organization. And when it became big, it became more of an organization and less of a family because of all the administrative needs and so on. So I think that this gathering that we are, most of the people in this gathering called EGY, Explorations of Gyan and Yoga, are pretty experienced Raj yogis. And this has been going on for about a year on a monthly basis. And it's been developing as a sort of forum where people can really talk about their concerns. And so I think that we can and we should find a good way. I'm not sure that I have already found a good way. I'm not sure that I can offer myself or any other of my brothers and sisters to do this, but definitely I think that this is a useful forum for people to really talk about what they need to talk about. And one of the words that emerges is safe space. People need a safe space in which to talk about things. And you may have something like that where you are, but most people don't. And so for the moment, I think that I have to make myself available and say, if you need to have a conversation with myself, and maybe some others of my brothers and sisters here can also make themselves available to hear you, to exchange with you. And we can also maybe have another EGY session in which we really talk about in detail how to manage the emotions and so on that come up. I think that would be a logical next step, so that people can, keep their privacy, but also we can take up some of the issues that come up without invading your privacy. I think it's possible for us to do that, so that people really realize that what you're going through, you're not the only one. And also, very importantly, when all of these things erupt, it doesn't mean you're weak. It doesn't mean you're bad. It doesn't mean anyone can take it upon themselves to make you feel bad about yourself. That is really not a good way of interacting. That is not how Baba likes his children to care for each other. Caring for each other is a very important aspect of family. Of course, we cannot, what shall I say? It's not like some people expect, like in Christianity, there is this idea that Jesus will take away all your problems. And sometimes people think, oh, Shiv Baba will do that. And there are many, many, many BKs who present Raj Yoga in a way that I think is not actually Raj Yoga. So I think there's some unclarity about all that. And we have to really understand Gyan properly. So this is really why we took up this what shall we call this forum to explore Gyan and yoga. So if people teach and learn Gyan in a very simplistic way and they don't understand, but they think they understand, then that's, to me, that's not right. So we need to correct all these things and move forward in a much better way. So I think EGY is an attempt to enable us to do that.
Okay. The next question is, recently I'm thinking about what is the point of going to the local center now, because as you pointed out, I do not feel sustained from it, and my priority is now to be in solitude and sometimes get connected through other BKs to networks like this one. But sometimes I feel, because I used to get Baba's sustenance from there, I should give the return to the family there, and the feeling of guilt with Baba comes in between. How do I overcome this conflict inside?
I think that's something quite a lot of people are feeling. And in many ways, the phenomenon of the COVID-19 and all of the restrictions and so on, which meant that all the centers had to be closed, Madhuban had to be effectively closed. And so people were thrown back upon their own selves. And then this phenomenon is also there that for some reason centers are not able to provide what they used to provide in the past. And so in many ways, this forum is also calling for teachers and centers to fulfill the function that they used to fulfill. Perhaps one of the reasons is that the people who look after the centers have not had adequate sustenance themselves that they can pass on to others. In my personal view, there hasn't been teacher training of the type that I think there should be, where you really learn how to provide sustenance, how to make the center meaningful. So the center is not supposed to be just an office for recruiting people into BK, because if you do that, but you don't have what Raj Yoga is to offer to people, then that's not quite right. So I think for me, a very high priority is this thing called teacher training, which I mentioned a few times. And maybe teacher training is totally the wrong word, but I'm using it because that's the word that has been used. But I think that the level of Raj Yoga that we need to be on is a much, much higher level than what we're getting from the organization. And the organization is maybe more interested in trying to get people. But if you want people to come, then you must give them the material. You must enable them to become good Raj yogis. And so I think this is what we're trying to accomplish, and so it's definitely in my mind to maybe use EGY as a forum to really develop these things. I'm not sure how easy it is to do it online, but it should be possible, so that we really think about what a center is. I mean, there may be many people on this in this session who are center coordinators. You know, we call this thing center coordinator. So all the vocabulary has become very administrative, and it's like you're an administrator. And I think that it's become maybe out of balance. A lot of administration is needed, but it shouldn't take over and push out all the other things, because, excuse me, a Raj Yogi is a being who exudes and reflects the qualities of God. And God is not that much of an administrator, more of a fountain of qualities, and especially a fountain of knowledge. So I would like the centers to be really good places of tapasya, places of study, and not just places of can you do this and can you do that. And because all of these things are absolutely the norm in regular Indian spiritual organizations who specialize in getting people to do work. And it's well known, but we don't have to be like that. I don't think that's what Shiv Baba came to do. So we're really being quite seminal here and really looking at what it is that we are here for. Are we fulfilling our purpose? So we have to identify our purpose, articulate our purpose. And I think also we need to upgrade the pedagogy of our study so that it's not just like kindergarten, because we're not children in kindergarten. We are well-educated, worldly wise people who have a right to study this at the level at which Baba is offering it. And we don't want dumbing down or to be like little children. And so this EGY is overall an effort to bring everything up to this level. So I hope that we will fulfill that.
Okay, next question. Sister Denise, there are souls that are doing this practice alone at home without being involved with any centers, not because we are afraid of boiling and roasting in centers, But because the service in centers is very superficial and seems like wasted time, the lectures online are more intense, Gyan, and this is what we want. Therefore, some of us prefer doing this alone with the online family like EGY. The question is this wrong? Are we not part of the family that Baba created?
Well, there may be quite a few people who may want to let you know that this is wrong. But if you consult your conscience, if I consult my conscience, and if I think about my, something like 48 years experience in the BK world, I would say it's not wrong. I would say that it is, in a way, unfortunate that it had to be this way. But then if we think about the knowledge of drama, then we would say, well, it is this way, but it doesn't mean it's wrong. You see, people who are of a religious orientation like to make you think of everything as right and wrong, and mostly everything is wrong, so that you feel guilty, so that you are diminished and disempowered. But I'm not particularly religious, so I don't really like that sort of thing at all, because to me, God is not a religious person either. So I think that we need to really be aware that what he created is a spiritual university, and so that we have a right to study at a university level this knowledge, which is way past anything most of these PhDs of spiritual knowledge have any clue about. And why we are not doing it, we could, and we should, and we will, and we are opening this up. I think that it's a kind of natural evolution to have this online community. And because the numbers of people is so gigantic, and I think also because if you look at what a lot of the other people are doing, it's all to do with, ceremonies and cake cutting and candle lighting and all that sort of thing, which is not very interesting for everybody. And the people who are in EGY are very interested in the study, in deepening things. And really, we need to address this guilt-inducing way of doing things, so that even if it's there, you don't fall into that trap. Because to me, if you actually do something wrong, which is quite rare, but if you actually do something wrong, you have a perfectly good conscience, which will let you know if you did something wrong, and it only takes 1 second, and you only need 1 second's worth of guilt, and then you don't do it again. But to make people feel guilty because they're not doing something that they want has nothing to do with right and wrong, and that's all to do with what happens in a religion where you want to keep all the people. And I don't think this is really that. Baba has said very specifically, and it's right there in the Gita, he's there to destroy all that and establish a kingdom and a civilization which is based on spiritual principles, real spiritual principles. And he is the ocean of knowledge. He is not the ocean of bhakti. But I think that in a way what we're doing is sort of disturbing to the powers that be, because we're saying don't put us in this situation and make us feel wrong, because we're not wrong. And hey, do your duty. And of course, nobody likes that, but we have to.
Another soul wants to know, or shares her experience actually, or his experience. From my experience, a support group within the center is the last thing that you want when going through a tough time. Support from one person perhaps, but I felt extremely resentful when several people tried to fix me, in inverted commas. In fact, I had to go outside of the center to get the help that I needed.
Yeah.
And so Sol wanted to share that.
Yeah, and this is the case for quite a few people, and so I think what we're doing here is saying, look, we must handle this situation in a far more mature way than it's being done, and hopefully through EGY we will be able to maybe put together a little group of people who are quite knowledgeable about how to help people through situations, and not just the latest, greatest amateur BK fixer-upper, because that's really not okay at all. Because people do not realize the amount of personal development that's needed to be able to really help another person across a lot of the obstacles. They do it in that way, and it's really not right. And I think because from the higher echelons, it is maybe told that, yeah, do it like this, but it's not the way to do it. So I hear you and I agree with you. And what you're saying is very important. And when you went outside the center, you did exactly the right thing. And the people who are looking after the centers really do not have the training, the background, the knowledge that they need in order to fulfill that function. And the people who put them in that position need to be called out to say, you can't put just anybody in a position which requires proper background and training and let them loose on people so that they don't do what they need to do properly. This is not service, and we have to take it seriously. So thank you for your comment. Yeah.
Another soul wanted to know, what is your vision of the golden age, away from the heavily decorated Lakshmi and Narayan and people flying in gold and people living in gold castles? This vision is very gross and unhelpful.
Yes, of course, it is. But, this is the thing. When the when BK first started, there were a lot of visions. And there were visions of the golden age in terms of what it looks like. And it is a very prosperous place. And it's not just a place, but, behind all that prosperity and golden diamonds and whatnot, there's a way of being, there's a quality of being a human being. And to me, the quality of the people is not indicated by these pictures of gods and goddesses in fancy palaces, which all corresponds more closely to the one type of Indian view of what looks nice. It's a matter of taste, it's a matter of aesthetics, it's a matter of sensitivity. So yeah, these things are extremely gross. But to represent the golden age in art, I mean, I did have a vision of a little bit of what a deity looks like, and it's very, very subtle. The people are very slender, extraordinarily beautiful. The atmosphere is very subtle. And I tried to draw it or represent it somehow, but it was not possible because the quality of matter is so different from what it is now. Everything here is really gross, and there's a very large number of BKs who like gross representations of the golden age, and when you show it like that, then it attracts people who like that. But somehow or the other, Baba has brought us into his gathering with a purpose, and we have to discern that purpose and try to fulfill that purpose. And I think some of it has to do with understanding this knowledge, and maybe even if there are any of us who have the artistic capacity to represent it in a way that is much more subtle and that corresponds better to the reality of it. But I think more than anything, the golden age is about the way people are. And it's to do with purity. And mostly, BKs, most of the BK teachers, they're religious people. And so they do everything in a very religious way because they're religious. And religious people are always trying to impose their, like, you have to be this and you can't be that, and all of these rules and regulations. And that's like a sort of 15th century religious school for small children, and that's really inappropriate. So what I'm saying is that when we upgrade everything, the pedagogy in particular, the translations of the Murlis, the way this is spoken about, the way we talk to each other about it, the priorities, the focus of attention, what do we really understand by service, what is really service, what is really pure karma. We really need to rethink everything so that we can bring it up to a higher level, which would be relevant to the wider world. And in my view, we need to reach the thinkers of the world, wherever they happen to be, because they could catch this and understand its relevance. Because at the moment, the way BK is being presented is getting less and less and less relevant to the wider world, and more relevant to a very small group of devotional Hindus. And so we're saying, wait a minute, that's not how it's supposed to go. So we need to say, hey.
A soul wanted to know, is offering Bhog a cultural thing? Is it not more important or of the essence to cook and eat in the company and remembrance of Baba?
Yeah, the history of offering Bhog is like this. It goes back to at the beginning of BKs, they didn't do that. Baba had wiped out every single one of the traditional Hindu practices except for chanting Om. And then a few things came back in. And of course, when you do something innovative and revolutionary, you definitely bring in your sanskaras and what you know. So a lot of it is there like that. But when the BKs went to Mount Abu, and all of the money was used up, so they had what they call the beggary part, where there was very, very little resources, and that they didn't really have enough to eat. And Baba used to take the family out into the mountains to gather wild berries so that they had something to eat, because they didn't have any money at all. And it was a very critical time. And so Brahma Baba got the idea that maybe this poverty is because we're not offering bhog. And offering bhog is a traditional Hindu practice, and you'll find it in all the religions. There's always this thing of offering to God. And it's a system that is extremely widespread all over the world, and especially very much in the more ancient religions, where the offering is all to do with invoking the spirit. And so he wanted to invoke the spirit of Shiv Baba and to acknowledge that you are the provider. And so he initiated this. And the other thing was that offering bhog was also all about going in trance and seeing what's happening in the subtle regions, getting a message, something like that. And so it corresponds with people in whom this practice is there. And it is said it's important to show physically, but you see, I don't see anything wrong with what you're saying. Eat in remembrance, cook in remembrance, do this, do everything in remembrance. And you're operating on a less gross way, on a more subtle way, maybe more genuine way. So you can work with that. I don't see really that there's a serious problem about it. It's just all about this interface between Hinduism and Gyan. And it's in some ways a tug of war, because Baba so often says Bhakti is the Copper Age and Iron Age, and Gyan is the Golden Age and Silver Age. And I don't think in the Golden Age anybody will offer anything to God, because there's no consciousness of God. But people will not, abuse nature. They will not exploit the planet. Everything stays in balance. And this is because people have a natural, very powerful spiritual energy and harmony with each other, and food comes to them. So all of this is about different things to do with what's called pure karma. And so many of the Hindu practices will come into Gyan, because otherwise the Hindus won't like it. And then if you're not a Hindu, then it's not a question of not liking it. So again, it's about going to the seed of everything and deciding, what is really a good way to go. And that is something that originally, see, all these decisions were based on consensus between the BKs, but they were all Hindus from Sindh, and then it became wider, and then it went into the Western world. And there's a very few BKs who are Westerners. And on this gathering, there are quite a few from India who want to also come to another level and not be just religious Hindus, but really spiritual Brahmins who are the seeds of a new culture, a new tradition. So we're creating this, and this is a forum for talking about what we are up against and what we think is important. And I think gradually things are coming through, which are the right things.
I'm going to pose these two questions in one because they're directly related. There's no support group in the center. Instead, they laugh at you and spill it to the mass public. I've gone to the outside for help. And the second one is how to practically deal with chronic superimposed disempowerment, ignoring and rejecting as if I do not exist by the CC, which makes me feel standing alone because I do not respond to controlling behavior and do not fit in a glue pot. So I am so happy about this forum. I feel as if I belong here and working and not accepting negativity. Sister Denise, this is a common thread of questions that emerged last week as well, as to how to deal with such a dilemma.
Well, this is really, Baba took up this expression, Brahmin culture, and I have seen that there are many people who come into Gyan from India and who have a certain ultra arrogant approach to things, and they will, bring that into Gyan, and they can't tell the difference, and nobody calls it out except this group here, which is calling it out and saying, hey, you can't behave like that. I think one of the things that happens when you're a minority or you're a perceived minority is you get discriminated against, and this kind of behavior is typical of a majority which behaves in a certain way towards a minority of disempowerment, belittlement, etc., etc. And that really has no place in the community of Brahmins. And so it's just very important for us to call it out and say, hey, you can't behave like that. But because all these things are kind of classified as shrimat, or they're condoned, or they're allowed, or there are people who behave in that way in very high positions, and so other people who have those sanskaras think that they can do that too. So again, it takes me back to this expression, we're doing seminal work. That's really, we're going to the roots of everything and saying this tree has to grow as Baba wants it to grow. And this is not the same at all as Iron-aged Hindu bhakti. And there are many people who just cannot tell the difference. And so it's really up to us to say, this is what I expect and need and require from a functional family, school, hospital. And I think one of the things that we're doing in EGY is we're putting words on stuff. We're articulating and also validating that the way things have developed for one reason or another, according to trauma, it had to be like that, no doubt. But we're saying, okay, now let's put this into the pie and say, you can't carry on like that. But we cannot do that unless we really give very good quality, what I call teacher training, so that the teachers don't do that. And the teachers set the tone. And if the teachers don't know that, then they have to be called to account. One thing that's, I think, very helpful is accountability. And maybe if there's no accountability, then people can do whatever they want. And so we have to say, no, this kind of behavior is not acceptable, cannot be condoned, etc., etc., etc. And so we talk about it, because when you talk about it, then it's an open topic. And when you have a teacher training and you have, say, I don't know, what I've done in the past, I've had groups of about 50. Maybe a good way to do it is to use the retreat centers as places for really teacher training. And it is set up for that in India, but they don't actually teach what I think needs to be taught. But we have to find a way to do that in groups of whatever can fit in a retreat center. Maybe it can be done online. We have to find ways to do it. And I think there are ways, and we have to work together to make this a reality, so that everybody feels that they have what they have a right to and what they have a need for, and that they can speak without being put down. That's basic human right, to me.
Another question in a similar vein, is in what measure involve oneself in centers activities when the coordinator wants to dominate and manipulate?
Well, again, it's someone who has not been if you have a proper teacher of teachers, they will notice the sanskaras of that teacher, and they will call that person to account, and it will be done within the context of the group, so that you do not get a situation like that. But because nobody is given adequate preparation, they just bring in whatever their Lokic iron-aged sanskaras are, and they do that. And there's quite a lot of people who do that. And so what I think is also possible in this forum is to also acquire tools for standing up for yourself and asserting yourself and saying no, because there is a culture of Haji to everything and everyone, and that's not right. You say Haji to God, but you don't say Haji to everyone. But if somebody thinks that they're representing God, if you're representing God, you better represent God properly, because otherwise you're misrepresenting God, and then you're causing damage, and then you're causing suffering, and that's all clocked up as negative karma. So there is an expectation that the teachers should know what they're doing and how to do it. But without any proper training, we can't really expect that, but we do expect it. And so I feel that a very important thing is to put in place suitable, adequate, proper, balanced preparation for the teachers. Because we don't really need millions of centers or millions of teachers. We need good centers and good teachers. And if they're not so many, it's okay. And we can do a lot online. And so this is, in a way, one of Baba's blessings, that he inspired the IT people to get this sort of communications technology going. And we can take great benefit from it. And we must.
Okay. Sister Denise, you answer these questions from the vantage point of the teachers. I think what these souls want to know is, how do they protect themselves from being treated like how they stated when they are exposed to such behavior year in and year out? Well, and in line with that, Denise Ben, there's a question from someone that says that the Murli sometimes makes it sound like Baba is saying that going outside the center is a defamation. Is this a misrepresentation?
It's definitely a misrepresentation. And I have issues with the translation, definitely, because these things are presented completely out of context. And that's because the teachers don't really know they don't know the wider context. They don't present this in a wider context, and they need to. So in many ways, it goes back to preparation of the teachers. But from the angle of the students, you come into this in good faith. And people tell you, we are the experts, you don't know anything, and we are selected, chosen by God, blah, blah, blah. And so you have to believe in us and all that. And that puts them in a position of power over. And of course, that's the traditional Indian way of the guru and the student and so on. But, if you want to be a guru, you better be trained up for it. And it takes 50 years to get to be a good guru anyway. So not 5 minutes or 5 months or whatever it is. No. So I'm really calling out this process of putting incompetent people in positions of power and authority over unsuspecting people who come in good faith. So that's really a big thing that must be addressed. But also, as a student, you have to be in your power and understand what your rights are. And if a teacher is manipulative and dominating, you have to look deep in yourself and see, do you have what it takes to not allow that? Because a lot of people who come for spiritual practice, they come because they have areas of their being that they feel are weak and they want to strengthen it. And so you expect to come into a supportive environment, and you find yourself coming into an environment which is not supportive, then it creates confusion. So I think that, in a forum like this, at least you can know that if somebody wants to oppress you and dominate you and all that, then you have every right to say, I'll come back when you learn how to treat people properly. Because if everybody votes with their feet, which is what's happening, centers are emptying out. People are not going. And it's not because of COVID. It's because of all these reasons. And so if there's nobody wanting to come to the center, and if the programs are not relevant and nobody's coming to them, then any business will say, oh, nobody wants our product, so we better take a look at what we're doing. And when you have people who are saying, look, you can't treat me like that. That's not Shrimat. And there are people who are doing that. And then the sort of people in charge let rip at them. But you have to be able to stand up for yourself, because if there's no accountability from above, then there has to be accountability from below. And so give yourself permission for that.
Assertiveness.
Yeah.
Next question. Can you explain about the Murli points? Studying is, this is how the question is phrased. Can you explain about the Murli point? Studying is Satuguni, Rajuguni, and Tamoguni.
Yeah. There are different levels of study. So to me, Tamoguni would be like a very gross level of study where somebody tells you you are a soul and you repeat back, yes, I am a soul. And it's just like learning by rote. It's very ordinary, very gross. So that would be Tamoguni. And this is my big thing. We need to upgrade the pedagogy so that we have really Satoguni study, which is that you learn how to think, you learn how to process the ideas, you really learn how to churn and extract the essential truth that is hidden in the Murlis. So people take the Murlis at kind of face value, or they take it like very only very slightly or thoroughly uneducated people. And when Baba was giving the Murli, he was speaking to a full spectrum of people. And yet, when people are teaching the Murli, they just mostly take it on this very superficial, gross level, which fits very, very well with a basic Hindu. But if you go into the depth of the Murli and extract what it's really saying, then you're getting at very high level secrets which are needed to bring a person into their power. Excuse me. And that to me would be more Satoguni study. And I'm very, very keen on that, because I think this is the key that's going to allow us to really fly and carry the Brahma Kumari's World Spiritual University to a point where people see that, yeah, it is a university, because at the moment it looks like kindergarten, and that's Tamaguni, maybe Rajaguni or somewhere in between. But we can't carry on like that because nobody's interested.
Okay. What is Baba's role in yoga in relation to our purification, apart from touching the chit and bringing out all the impurity? We want to feel love from Baba, and there's frustration when you repeatedly feel and do not feel that connection. Is this normal, and how do you go about experimenting? Could it be that we have too many expectations of Bhakti type God, and it is important to understand his role well?
I think the main problem is that people have not been taught Gyan properly, and so they are not able to practice Raj Yoga properly, which means that they don't do yoga properly. And that means that once you start doing this, you are throwing down the gauntlet to all of your impurities to come to the surface. But if you don't keep up with that by doing high-level yoga, then you will get overwhelmed by all of these impurities that are coming out at high speed and accelerating. And so from time to time in the Avyat Murlis, Baba will say, hey, you're not doing this right. But the teachers are not emphasizing that part. And so this is, again, a teacher matter. You need to be able to accumulate yoga power, because when you are more powerful than your settlement of karmic accounts, which is very difficult, usually they're more powerful than you. But when you give special attention to the yoga and the study, and not worry so much about all this service that has to be done, which takes 99% of your time and energy, then you cannot really develop yourself and have enough yoga to be able to be communing with Baba such that you can experience his love, because all of that gets eclipsed by all of this other stuff that's going on. So this is a matter of really understanding Raj Yoga in a way that it isn't taught. So we're trying to, or at least I'm trying to, find a way to make that happen more generally, because my teacher was Dadi Janki, and she was very, very good at all of this. But the other teachers don't teach like she did. Dadi Prakashmani, Dadi Gulzar, yes. And the others, especially the current ones, they're all interested in getting lots of people to come and getting people to work. So that's very Hindu temple style of stuff. So, to be a serious Raj Yogi is not a small thing. And you cannot serve the masses and expect the masses to become super yogis, because that's just not how it works. A few people are mystics, very few. Tons and tons of people are the congregation of the religion. Okay, if you want that, that's fine, but don't expect to end up as a serious Raj Yogi who has actual contact with God. But you want that, and you have a right to that, which means that You need to give very, very close attention to the study, because the study and going into the depth of the study gives you the energy to make contact with Baba, because you need a lot of energy to make contact with Baba. And then you can, he wants you to be up on his level. You need a lot of energy, you need a lot of pure karma, and you need deep gyan to do that. And so we have to provide that for you. And, there's maybe a lot of people who don't want us to do that, but we do it anyway. And there may be many who don't want you to be a super yogi, but you do it anyway. And this is again comes back to the assertiveness. You assert your right, that you are a powerful soul and you have a right to go as high as you want to go, and you're not going to let anything stop you. So this is all about asserting who you are and what you are, and not allowing anyone to push you down. And yet you have to also balance that you have to work with people, because you don't want to, throw out the baby with the bathwater, as it were. So balance is important.
Okay. The next question is, I've been observing an increase of angelic dictatorship and silent treatments, etc. I'm really interested in training myself by churning on a deeper level. My question is, how can we promote these trainings?
Well, I think we are doing that by just having these conversations. And, I try and do whatever I can with what I call the Murli notes, which I send out to quite a big group of people. And to kind of show people how you can get to the depths of things in the way that I was shown, because I think that that's a real Raj Yoga. And so I think the important thing is to continue with this, to increase it, intensify it, and then it becomes the norm instead of something rather on the side. But it takes time to bring it to that point. So we have to have patience, and also we have to push it ahead.
This is more of a comment from a soul who's didn't feel that she was treated well. Her question is, I did not call out those behaviors when I was treated in a way I didn't like, because I thought then that is not being spiritual, and that is what it means to tolerate.
Well,
so I think the question is, if you are treated by a center coordinator who is dominant and wants to manipulate you, how far do you take your tolerance?
Well, we have 8 powers, and they all balance out each other. And you need to balance your power of tolerance with your power to face.
Say more about that.
The power to face means you're calling it out, you confront. And you have to be quite skilled.
Okay. No Brahmin is ever taught to confront the person running the center.
Well,
they're not taught that. It's considered to be so disrespectful or against Srimad to confront the person running the center.
Exactly, but you have to be able to stand up for yourself. It doesn't mean you have to be aggressive and pop them on the nose, but you do have to stand up for yourself and say, hey, would you please treat me respectfully? And if you don't, I'm out of here. And it's not because of anything problem with Baba, it's a problem with you. And, if the people who are running the centers want to be respected, they're never going to teach you that it's okay to confront. But every so often in the Murli, Baba says, hey, if there's a problem with your center coordinator, you can go above his or her head to the next level, all the way up to Baba. And, there are many situations where people were just really giving the center coordinators a hard time, you see. And so it's all about getting the balance right, because you don't want to let people push you around. If you're a center coordinator, you have to establish that you have your position, but you have to do it correctly, you see. And if you go over a certain boundary, or if the students go over a certain boundary, then it has to be brought back into the right balance. And this is why I think we have to talk about it so that it becomes right. Because it's not really a matter of knocking out the center coordinators. The center coordinator also has to stand up for him or herself if there are people really trying to take her down. But you have to use your power of discrimination, all the other powers, and to understand what's right. And if you're isolated, you may not get it right. And this is why it was always important to go to Madhuban, to have the larger gatherings where everything was supposed to be put in the right perspective. I don't know whether that actually succeeded, but that was the idea. And I think that this is also something that we're trying to do here, so that there is a proper mutual respect, and also understand if you're in a position where you're a teacher, then you say, look, this is the knowledge, and we're not here to discuss some other philosophy. And if you want to learn Raj Yoga, then this is what it is. So you have to set that. But you see, this is why I think it's just really important to train the teachers so that the teachers are able to teach properly. And that includes speaking to people, which is not talking down or manipulating or whatever, because manipulation is a very common practice in many parts of the world, but doesn't mean it's good just because it's common.
Okay. Baba says remain silent, even for business, speak few words only. Is this also just basic translation? What is the balance between being silent and becoming a very dry person?
Well, no, I mean, this came up just a few days ago, and this is really in the context of spousal abuse, which is extremely common in Asia, and it's really common everywhere in the world, and especially what happens in a patriarchal society where the men are very dominant and the women are not having any rights at all. The men will abuse the women physically, verbally, and in every other possible way. And if you confront a guy who has got the whole of society backing him up, including the patriarchal women, then they will beat you to a pulp. And if you want to survive, you have to use some tactics, because it's a very violent family environment, and people bring that, what they've experienced in normal life in the Iron Age, they bring it into Gyan unconsciously, subconsciously. And especially when you start mixing up cultures, and you get into a lot of trouble unless you really start addressing these things as they arise. And so this, when he said, keep quiet, it was not to do with business at all. It was to do with the women who are wanting to come in Gyan, and their families are wanting to prevent them. And if they don't keep quiet and find little ways to get around this situation, they will be taken out, killed, tortured, tormented, whatever. And Baba doesn't like that to happen to his beloved children. That's what that was
okay,
about.
so what is the Srimad on speaking then? Because that's the second part of Saul's question. What is the balance
Good.
between being silent and becoming a very dry person?
First of all, it's nothing to do with Srimat. Srimat has no connection with advice of how to conduct yourself in a dysfunctional family. That's not Srimat, that's just advice. And, Srimat is the concept of the soul, of God, karma, drama. All that is Srimat. And all these other things is not Srimat. It is recommendations by people who are a little bit more experienced in life to people who are a little bit less experienced in life. And to use the word Srimat for that is very misleading.
Okay, Denise, the question is, what is the balance between being silent and becoming a very dry person?
You really have to work it out for yourself, because you cannot make a blanket statement and describe that balance. You can take different situations. One thing I learned a long time ago is we cannot take up hypothetical situations because they're never real. They're never true. So if you want to give advice about something that doesn't exist, your advice won't have much meaning. So in a situation like that, you have to take the actual person and the actual situation and have a conversation about it, or you have a conversation with yourself, because this type of thing you cannot make blanket statements about. It just never works. You cannot come up with something true.
There's not a question. This is just a comment from a listener at the centers. The senior is a dictator. I think it's time to have new blood, young, experienced people. And the next line is, the next level is just as bad. Instead, I think it's just you and Baba and your karma. Sister Denise, I'm actually glad somebody brought this up in the chat, because this was a question in my mind as well. At the end of the day, irrespective of the support that you get from outside or not, is it not a question of each man for himself, or each soul for him or herself?
Well, it is. It is. I think many people would rather it's not like that, because people would like to be cared for and loved and supported and all of that. And this is all the publicity is like that. But it's also a very competitive environment. And, it's a preparation for destruction. So you really do need to be strong. And in many ways, I think the drama is putting people in these very difficult situations in centers, which is a message to say, if you don't get your act together, you're going to be toast, And so get your act together and come into your power, and don't be afraid of that. Don't let yourself be a doormat. And this is sort of basic human psychology. But because you come into an environment where everything is Srimat and finger wagging, and you're not allowed to do this and you're not allowed to do that, which is what is done to children about 500 years ago, but it's not something that you have to allow. You have to say, look, I am son of God like everybody else, but don't infantilize me and don't tell me what to do, because, we have to bring in these proper functional, healthy boundaries and checks and balances. And you can't expect it to be done from the top down. It won't be. It has to be done from whoever's involved, and that's, I don't see any other way.
If the next question is, if we use the powers appropriately at the right time, in the right way, it should be possible to balance the individual and the collective.
I would say so. And this is why it's really good to study this knowledge at a much higher level where we really talk about that and work through that. Because at the moment, the study doesn't really allow for that at all. And that's not okay, because we produce a very dysfunctional BK family, but we don't need to.
Okay. The next question caught my attention somewhat. I'd like you to go into detail about this, Sister Denise. The question is, it does require a tremendous level of power to discern. And what is your take on that? And I think the question is also how? How do you go about discerning? Especially, Sister Denise, in a context where you are faced with your own sanskars and negativity and drama. How do you use your power of discernment in that context?
It's a long process because you have to do serious work on yourself. And in BK, nobody ever tells anybody how to do serious work on themselves. So this is part of what I call teacher training that has to be brought in, how to do serious work on yourself and really see the reality of yourself with rigorous honesty. And then you also have to be sensitive. So when you have really good yoga, you do become very sensitive to the point of being able to see what other people can't see, to be a good judge of character, to understand the games that are going on, and to not take things as they appear, because appearances are not usually the reality. And you need experience. And so you have to go through a long period of time before you acquire this. And this is why people believe that older people are wiser. And that's the case only if they do the inner work and they really do learn the lessons of life, which only a few people actually do. But we need to be those few. And so to really talk about stuff in a proper way, to study the knowledge in a proper way, to do inner work in a proper way, to learn about how to balance the powers in a proper way, all of these things, to my way of thinking, should be fundamental to the curriculum of a university, and we need to bring that in. And I think EGY is trying to do that. And maybe it meets resistance because people like the status quo. It's they don't want to have to work that hard or whatever. It doesn't matter. We must bring it in.
Next question. It's a long one, so let me read part of it. Sister Denise, you have so much of knowledge and you have answers for everything, and you speak from such a deep place. Do we younger yogis have time to get to this level?
It's a very lovely question, because we used to say that to Dadi Janki, and she used to say, look, it took us so many years to reach the level we're at. And so we will give you all of this stuff that took us 40, 50 years to acquire. And so you don't start where we started, you start where we are now, and then we move together forward. So it's just the accumulation of experience and knowledge and so on gets shared, and you catch up very quickly. So no, you can, but you just have a right to these kinds of forums and study and good quality teaching and so on, so that you can avail yourself of whatever is there. This is your right. To me, basic human right is to have access to the knowledge at the level that you need it to be or that you want it to be.
It's beautiful. Okay, this is more of a comment than a question. Self-esteem and powerful self-talk is of the essence.
Yeah. I mean, there was a very interesting point in the, in the Murli, I think it was yesterday, where he said something about willpower. You know, if your will is weak, you will not bother to change your self-talk. So all you need is the will to do it. And so get your will going and make yourself think in a way that is good for your own personal honor and dignity.
Also more of a comment, becoming a deity then means staying true to your own authenticity. So you stay true to yourself and decide based on your understanding of the situation and respond from a high level of virtue.
You know, the word deity means giver. And people in the Iron Age are depleted, so they're takers. If you fill yourself with all of the power of God and all of the knowledge of God, then you have something to offer and you can be a giver. So a deity is really a giver.
Okay, next one is here the soul has achieved a lot of spiritual elevation away from the center. I've only followed Srimad and Maryadas to achieve being so close to Baba as a relationship and direct contact in the subtle region. Well, I suppose it was more of a comment.
But the thing is, this is not nirvruti marg. This is not a sannyasi practice. It's quite possible to do these things by yourself, but you need to have the context of the other Raj yogis, because otherwise you can very easily, without realizing it, go off on a track that is deceptive. It's very easy. And so you need to have a context of Raj yogis. And maybe your center or the people in your center are not what you want, but maybe a larger forum like this can be a context that will work for you. But, you know, we do need to have a balance of solitary time to develop ourselves, but we also need to develop our relationships in the Brahmin family, because when we go to the Golden Age, we will not be all alone there. We'll be with other people. And there will be, there has to be a lot of pure karma between each other. Excuse me. Because otherwise it won't be the community of the deities. You'll come back in the Copper Age as a sannyasi if you don't do this. So that's just something to be aware about.
Next one is I'm concerned about the negative karma I created because I did not understand what we are talking about and kept myself suppressed.
Don't worry, because you did that, but now you don't. So, you know, time is such a thing. It's amazing. You know, he says, Jivan Mukti in 1 second. And the moment you realize something, it's like all whatever you didn't do, it's like it doesn't matter. It's like a dream. It seems to take a long time, but it's only just a moment. And so don't worry about all the long time, whatever you didn't do right. Do it right now and let go of that. It's fine, you know, nothing to worry about.
One of the questions that came up is that, you know, irrespective of whether one has a direct relationship with the center or not, how does one actually deepen and maintain that solid, clear link to Baba?
Well, I think the key is the Murli, you see, because the Murli is the most tangible thing that you have from God, because it's ink on paper, or it's on your computer screen, but effectively ink on paper, because he speaks and he says things. And this is one of the reasons why, you know, the translation really, I think, needs to be upgraded. That would help. A lot of people nowadays are able to discern the Hindi because there's so many dictionaries out there, and a lot of people are actually quite good in developing the language. But it's not just the language, you need to know the background. And I was very lucky because I spent years and years and years with very knowledgeable Indian yogis, sisters, brothers. And so I was able to really polish up all my knowledge of the background and the scriptures and all of that contextual material, and also the social matters. Because the society of India is very, very different from the society of United States or Europe. And so we have a lot of bridges that we have to cross. And so that's just there. But I think what has come out of these discussions is I need to think more about how to make whatever has been my accumulated experience very, very available to people so that you have access to everything. I'm for many years I've been thinking about this teacher training thing. So partly we really have to understand the knowledge properly, because the knowledge is the basis of the yoga, and the yoga is the basis of the dharana, in the sense that you can only really become what Baba's talking about when you're really in your power. And then service is when people see you in that condition, they want what you've got. And so I think our communication needs to be like when we talk about service, Baba talked about service through the mind, or really making people able to feel the vibration of what it's like to be in contact with God. And so we have to think about bringing everything from Tamil to Rajo to Sato. And so we do this together in our forum, and we will continue to work on this. We have a group of people who discusses, what we will do each EGY, and it's growing and deepening and happening kind of organically. And at the same time, there are many who are suspicious, because whenever you bring in any innovation, definitely there will be resistance to that. That's normal. And it's helpful because then you have to deal with any reservations anyone might have and really make sure that the newness that you're bringing is the right thing. And definitely Baba calls for it again and again and again. But people are quite reticent to do something new and different. But we must go ahead with this. Yeah.
Next question. Will it be possible to create spaces for teachers to be able to guide souls on a faster path to understanding Gyan?
I believe so, but we have to really think about it and see how to make that a practical reality, and maybe experiment a little bit for that.
Okay. Denise Ben, I'll pose this one to you, but it's going to be the final question. We've got 10 minutes left, so give you about 5 minutes to answer this one, okay? How to differentiate between what is service and what is not? Sometimes they call service to do and to do in the center or retreats. If you have a family to take care of, they even use the theme that you have a lot of attachment. It is not understood what attachment and responsibility are, and they use this as a manipulation so that you do what they want, making you feel bad for taking care of your family, and not what they call service.
And there was a description of service that Baba gave, and he said that service is when everyone concerned is happy about it. And if someone is not happy about it, then that's not service. So that if you try to get some service done by manipulating people, then that's not service, right? And then what you have to do is you have to stand up for yourself and say, this is what I will do and this is what I won't do. And that's that. Because you see, if you allow yourself to be made to feel bad, then you're putting yourself in a position of weakness and you're jumping off your seat of self-respect and all that. So you just have to understand that when you are in an environment where people like to manipulate you because they know that they can get you to feel guilty, you have to shore yourself up against that, because you don't need to be weak. You're not learning Raj Yoga for the purpose of being manipulated, but for the purpose of overcoming anyone's attempt to manipulate you, because you're a volunteer. That means you do it if you want.
Okay. Sister Denise, it's 7 minutes to the close of today. I think we'll have a moment of silence after you leave everyone with some closing words.
Well, thank you, Magla, very much, and thank you everyone for joining. And I think it's quite a big group, which means there is a demand for this, and so we're trying to fulfill that as best as we can. But of course, our full support is Baba, and so let us have a few moments just to make it clear to ourselves that we have all the rights to the knowledge and to develop ourselves. We are in the context of all kinds of sanskaras. We have to stand up for ourselves, also be flexible, and really think about balancing all the powers so that we can manage, keep our head above water, be in our power, and proud of ourselves, stay on the seat of self-honor, self-regard. Baba has selected us for his reasons. No need to feel guilty about anything. Whatever you did that you don't feel good about, let it go. Move on, move forward. And we are pilgrims together, students together, and taking the highest possible exam together. And take love, take peace, take power, take energy from Baba. And also understand this, that the inheritance is the knowledge. His love for us is he gives us the knowledge. And it's up to us to really process the knowledge, take it in, take it on, understand it in depth. This is his gift to us. Om Shanti. Thanks to everyone, and we'll get back to you with what we'll do next. And I think we might shift the times a little bit, so we have a lot of discussion to do about that. It's very difficult to do something in the whole world where it's daytime for everyone, because the earth doesn't do that. But anyway, we'll try and figure it out. And so have a wonderful next few days and weeks, and happy Diwali. Diwali is coming up, and enjoy and be free, be easy, and be in your power. Lots of love to everyone. Om Shanti.